In presence of regional and foreign diplomatic missions, Yemen swears in new leadership presidential council. Despite healthy constant violations, the United Nations brokered truce remains good news for the wide world. The United Nations and healthy deal to stop using children as soldiers faces real challenges. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fouad. Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council swore in before the parliament yesterday in the interim capital, Aden. The move marks a paradigm shift in the Yemeni political scene. More on this is in the following report.
After 7 years of the war in Yemen with no changes, finally a step that might make a difference. In the southern port city of Aden, Yemen's internationally recognized presidential council was sworn in. Foreign ambassadors as well as the UN envoy to Yemen Hans Grunberg were present at the swearing-in ceremony, which took place in front of the parliament. Former President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi stepped down earlier this month, prompting the appointment of the Presidential Council. Hadi transferred his powers and those of his vice president to the council, which will run the country and lead peace talks with the Houthis. Hadi's move came amid the international and regional efforts to end the conflict. The move made the Houthi rebels angry, as it was meant to unify the anti-Houthi camp after years of infighting. It came as the Houthis and the government agreed on a 2-month brokered truce by the UN earlier this month. The council is managed by Rashad al-Alimi, an advisor to Hadi and former interior minister. Al-Alimi called on the international community to put pressure on the Houthis so that they can engage in peace efforts, especially after the recent attacks on Ma'rib, which resulted in violating the UN-brokered truce. Al-Alimi added that the council is committed to end the violence in Yemen and to stop the Houthis' brutal actions. In addition, he stated that they want to establish fair and permanent peace that preserves the state and its constitutional institutions. Finally, Parliament Speaker Sultan al-Barakani also stated that this is an opportunity to take the road of fair and honorable peace. He said, "Our hands are still extended for peace and our weapons are ready at the same time."
The United Nations brokered truce despite Houthi violation is considered the last chance for reaching a peaceful solution in Yemen. According to political observers, the truce can pave the way to a more durable peace in the country. The following report has more details on this.
The truce in Yemen came as a last chance for a needed calm, after the country and its people were ravaged by a ruthless 7-year war. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have died as a result of the brutal conflict that has destabilized the region and posed a threat to oil exports and navigation routes. The truce, called for at the start of this month, has now held for 3 weeks, far longer than in a previous cessation of hostilities. The United Nations envoy to the country, Hans Grunberg, who brokered the deal, has told the Security Council that there is a chance to steer Yemen in a new direction. The United Nations estimates that nearly 400,000 people have died as a result, and more than 3 million have been displaced from their homes. More than 24 million people, or 80% of the population in Yemen, need humanitarian assistance, and 2 out of 5 people are at risk of starvation. Directing its attention to Ukraine, the world has stopped paying attention to the unfolding catastrophe. The United Nations has been unable to raise the money needed to alleviate Yemeni suffering. What calls for optimism, however, is that the warring parties agreed on a truce when the world wasn't watching. The first test of the truce is whether it will last the full 2 months that were agreed upon by all the parties. Grunberg will have to use that time to get them around the table to negotiate a formal ceasefire and post-war arrangement of power. There is always the possibility that the truce will end without any progress and the fighting will resume. The Houthis used the previous United Nations brokered pause in fighting back in 2018 around Hodeida to rearm, eventually taking the port nearly a year later. And finally, there is a risk that Houthis patrons in Tehran will lean on them to return to the battlefield.
Yemen Airways announced that it will operate its first flight to and from the Jordanian capital Amman starting next Sunday. For his part, UN envoy Hans Grunberg welcomed the announcement of the first flight from Sana'a Airport in 6 years on Sunday. Since 2016, air navigation at Sana'a Airport has been halted with the exception of humanitarian flights belonging to the UN. The Yemeni parliament continued its sessions and reviewed the government financial statement. Earlier Speaker Sultan al-Barakani affirmed that the parliament will support the PLC and the government to achieve their national tasks in peace. The Yemeni government headed by Ma'in Abdul Malik in addition won a confidence vote from the parliament. This step came after nearly a year and a half after the announcement of the formation of the government. The European Union expressed its hope that the Presidential Leadership Council in Yemen will make progress towards peace. On the other hand, the World Food Programme said it has received 45 million euros from the European Union to combat starvation in Yemen. The World Food Programme said it will continue giving urgent support to face the worrying numbers of food insecurity. The Houthi militia continued its violations of the UN-sponsored truce on the western coast. The military media of the joint forces said it had monitored 19 violations of the truce committed by the Houthi militia yesterday on the fighting fronts in Hodeidah and Taiz. Government forces and tribes thwarted the Houthi infiltrations southern Maghreb. Field military sources stated that the Houthi militia tried to carry out infiltration attempts into sites on El Arif front, south of Maghreb, but the government forces and tribes drove them back. The sources indicated that the Houthi militia continued targeting government forces sites on all fronts in Maghreb, with artillery amid continuous overflights by the drones. Navigational sources said the Houthi militia carried out mobilization operations along the northern coast of the city of Hodeidah. They confirmed that the Houthi militia is using fishing boats to spread naval mines that target international navigation in the Red Sea. The United Nations praised a new signed action plan with Houthis to stop using children in armed conflict. More than 10,200 children have been killed or maimed since the beginning of the conflict, and thousands more have been recruited into fighting. The following report has more details on this.
Yemen is one of 8 countries whose national security forces are listed by the Secretary General for recruitment and use of children. The UN documented that 10,200 children have been killed in the war so far. Almost 2,000 Yemeni children, some as young as 10, recruited by the Iran-backed Houthis, were killed in the fighting between early 2020 and May 2021. The UN says that 3,500 children have been verified as deployed in the Yemen war, but according to admission of a Houthi military official in 2018, the rebels had recruited 18,000 child soldiers until then. Children as young as 10 were recruited to fight in the war. A Houthi military spokesman had denied that anyone below 18 was recruited and that there were even orders to reject children who want to join the fighting. The United Nations has reached an agreement, or what they call an action plan, with the Houthi rebels in Yemen to end and prevent recruiting or using children in armed conflict, killing or maiming children, and attacking schools and hospitals. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said the rebels committed to identifying children in their ranks and releasing them within 6 months. There is also the issue of children in conflict zones deprived of school and homes, and sometimes even separated from their families. But the question of child soldiers remains the most challenging issue, which needs to be addressed in a forceful way. The UN Houthi Agreement or Action Plan should be used as a stepping stone to prevent the deployment of child soldiers in other conflict zones as well. However, the important question here is whether the Houthis will keep to their part of the agreement and move out children from their forces within 6 months, or is it a wishful thinking?
Coming next. El Saleh Charity Foundation launches cash assistance project in Lahj Governorate. Welcome back. El Saleh Charity Foundation started distributing cash assistance for displaced people in Lahj. This effort is part of a big humanitarian project that the foundation is conducting in different areas. The following report has more details on this.
As part of its humanitarian roles in alleviating the suffering of the citizen, Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development, through the women's sector of the General People's Congress in Lahj Governorate, inaugurated the distribution of Ramadan aid to the displaced in the governorate within the humanitarian action plan during the blessed month of Ramadan.
نبدأ اليوم تدشين بالمساعدات مؤسسة الصالح الاجتماعية للتنمية.
Today we start the integration of aids provided by a Saleh Foundation for Development in the displaced camp of Mishkafa district in Lahj Governorate. We hope that aids can reach all the displaced people who are in great need of help, and we hope that a Saleh Foundation can always support the displaced families, as they have always been the first to provide aid to the needy people wherever they are. And so we specifically ask them to pay attention to Lahj Governorate, as it has a lot of displaced people in it who need help.
Displaced people and citizens affected by the war of the Houthi militia, which they have launched against the Yemeni people, and caused the displacement of citizens from their homes and deprived others of the most basic rights to a decent life. But Al Saleh Foundation has maintained the covenant to be the caring hand that relieves the citizen in peace and war.
We thank Saleh Foundation for the help they provided to the displaced people in this camp who are coming from Al-Barq, Razan, Taiz, Maqbana, Al-Hudayda and Hadran. We also thank them for the aids they have provided so far, and we ask them for more.
Ramadan aid was the tender touch that came to end the tears of deprivation and starvation that the citizen suffers as a result of the absurd war ignited by the Iranian-backed Houthi militia, turning millions of Yemenis into homeless and searching for a living with the least requirements.
We thank As-Salih Foundation for the interference in Mishkafa displacement site and distributing cash assistance during the month of Ramadan. We hope that they keep on doing these charity projects.
Al-Salih Social Foundation for Development was present in the lives of Yemenis who were stranded by the Houthi militia war. This foundation is and will always be for all Yemenis, wherever they are in their one country, in the present or in the future, known with its humanitarian touch and pioneering development projects.
U.S. envoy in Yemen Tim Lenderking thanked Yemeni Central Bank Governor Ahmed Ghalib for his reform efforts. Lenderking emphasized the importance of stabilizing Yemen's economy, reiterating that Yemen's humanitarian and economic crises are interlinked and that durable peace in Yemen requires solutions to economic grievances. Dam district in El Dala Governorate, south of Yemen, is witnessing a suffocating crisis due to the lack of domestic gas. Local sources confirmed that the crisis aggravated with the start of Ramadan and the price of cylinders skyrocketed. The Houthi militia has refrained from paying the salaries of employees for more than 5 years now. A wave of soaring prices of food commodities has hit major governorates across the country. Now during Ramadan, same prices have doubled twice. This made it hard for people to cope. The following report has more details.
For the 8th year in a row, the month of Ramadan has begun, and the Yemeni war continues, leaving catastrophic effects on the lives of the vast majority of Yemenis amid the aggravation of the economic and humanitarian crisis and the deterioration of the local currency prices against the dollar. This combination of crises facing Yemen has led to an economic and living decline for the population in various governorates, without exception coinciding with a crazy rise in the prices of foodstuffs, flour, and vegetables. The economic and humanitarian crises have largely cast a shadow over the lives of the population, with a large segment of the population affected who lost their sources of income due to the interruption of interests, institutions, and companies in the public and private sectors. Ramadan this year is different from all years. There is a crazy surge in prices. The United Nations announced that millions of Yemenis do not have enough food during the holy month of Ramadan, with the deteriorating living conditions in the country. In addition, the International Committee of the Red Cross said that Yemen's needs are enormous and beyond imagination. Last week, the United Nations International Organization for Migration announced that more than 25.5 million Yemenis are now living below the poverty line as a result of the repercussions of the war that has been going on for more than 7 years. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees stated through its Twitter account that many displaced people in Yemen depend on its cash assistance to buy food and medicine, pay rent for housing, and buy clothes. On March 16, the United Nations announced receiving financial pledges from 36 donors worth $1.3 billion for its humanitarian plan in Yemen for 2022, while it was seeking to obtain $4.27 billion to reach 17.3 million people. After 7 years of fighting, many households in Yemen are deprived of basic food needs, and families cannot secure anything to lead a normal life. Lastly, the 2-month truce between the warring parties that began on Saturday aims to bring some relief to Yemenis by allowing fuel shipments into Houthi areas.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. In presence of regional and foreign diplomatic missions, Yemen swears in new leadership presidential council. Despite Houthi constant violations, the United Nations brokered truce remains good news for the wide world. The United Nations and Houthi deal to stop using children as soldiers faces real challenges. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.